In this tutorial, let's explore the functionality of the channel selector. Now, in the last tutorial, I showed you how to make it visible, but let me just review that quickly. If you want to see the channel selector, or if you wanted to hide it as well, you just click the window layout button and then enable or disable the channel selector. So if I were to disable it, then you'll notice that it goes away and it leaves more room for the channels. But let's talk about the channel selector, so I'm going to re-enable that. And then we can see that the channel selector has two different tabs at the top of the display. There's a visibility tab and a zones tab. So let's talk about visibility first. You'll notice that we only have 3 items in the visibility window. These are the default stereo input and stereo output, which are the hardware inputs and outputs for our audio interface. And we have one additional audio track that we added. So if we were to add more tracks, then we would see more of those tracks in our visibility column. So let's go to the project pull-down menu and select Add Track, and let's add a whole grundle of new audio tracks. Let's add 20 stereo audio tracks. And now you'll notice that all of the audio tracks that we just added appear in the visibility column. Now, if we wanted to hide certain things, we just click on this little button, and now that that radio button is disabled, we no longer see our stereo input. And if we didn't want to see our stereo output, we could just click that radio box, and now we're looking at strictly all of the audio tracks. But maybe we don't need to see audio tracks 17, 9, 4, and so forth. This visibility column allows us to view or hide individual channels, and any channel that you have in your Cubase project, since they're going to appear in the mix console anyway, will also appear in the visibility column. So I'm going to re-enable all of those things. And then let's talk about the zones column. Now, the zones column is similar to the visibility column, but you'll notice that it has 2 of these little radio boxes. So the way that I like to think about these 2 buttons is what's on the left and what's on the right. Now, if both of these buttons are disabled, then the visibility from left to right in the mix console is going to adhere to the Cubase standard. So if you wanted to change how these individual tracks are oriented on the left or right side of the mix console, you can do that by using the left or right buttons in the zones column. So you'll notice that right now our stereo input is visible, and it appears where it normally would on the far left-hand side of the mix console. But let's say that we wanted to have that next to our stereo output. Since they're both hardware inputs and outputs, it might be a good idea to put them together. So what I'm going to do is come to the second button, the one on the right, and click on that. And what it's going to do is it's going to push that stereo input to the very end of our track list, because it's going to be on the right-hand side. So you'll notice that if we scroll across the bottom of the mix window here, let's scroll all the way to the right, and now it exists next to our stereo output. So essentially, the left button makes the channel appear on the left-hand side of the mix console, whereas the right button makes the track visible on the right side of the mix console. So if you wanted to make them all just back to their default positions, just make sure that all of those zone buttons are turned off. Now, let me give you a little bit better idea of how that works. I'm going to hit undo to just get back to our original stereo input, stereo output, and audio track. And now what I'm going to do is take the stereo input and make sure that it's all the way on the left. And then I'm going to take the stereo output and make sure it's all the way on the right. And then if I wanted to have the audio tracks appear on the right side of the mix console as well, I can click the right side button. And now if you look, you can see that the audio track is now pushed all the way to the right of the mix console. See? Left and right. So that's how you think of the zone buttons inside of the channel selector. And now in the next tutorial, I'm going to show you how to search for channels.